Gator, we have breaking news.
I think you got to read something.
Breaking news on 97.1 The Ticket is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz Vans. Find out how far an extra mile really goes. According to Adam Schefter of ESPN, the Detroit Lions are expected to hire LA Rams Director of College Scouting Brad Holmes as their new general manager per source. They are finalizing a multi-year deal.
Wow.
So, there it is. The first domino has fallen in Detroit. Gator, I don't feel like this is a leftover. I do not feel like this is a reach. And I feel like this guy checks the most important box. I went all in with my research on Brad Holmes, and I liked what I saw and gave all the reasons yesterday why I like this guy as a candidate. He's got there are some risks here. But Adam Schefter reporting that the Lions have a GM, and it's Brad Holmes, the director of college scouting with the Rams. Your first thought on this hire is what?
I think it's a good hire. We did a little bit of a investigation into him yesterday, and I liked what I saw. I like that he's the college scouting guy, so he's the draft guy, and I think that's where I want the focus on this team when it comes to a general manager to focus on have a heavier focus on the draft as opposed to pro personnel like trades or free agency, and I'm sure he's versed in that too. But his forte is the draft, and that's key to when you're doing a rebuild like the Lions are doing. So I like it. The other thing that strikes me is kind of what I said maybe a half an hour ago with the Atlanta Falcons. Now the Atlanta Falcons has kind of shifted their focus over to Fontenot because Holmes was a finalist with Atlanta, and what that told me, the little heads up that, hey, maybe the Lions got their guy. Now Atlanta has to go to plan B or plan C. This is not a third choice for the Lions. I mean, maybe it is if you take the fantasy guys out of it, like we did with Colbert or Schneider. But as far as the actual viable candidates, this guy's probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, look, my focus was, all right, what organizations crush it in the draft? And what organizations do the best job in the draft? And you look at Seattle, and they got Richard Sherman in the 5th round and Cam Chancellor in the 5th round. And you look at Baltimore has had very, very good drafts with 3rd and 4th round picks, and Joe Ortiz, who runs their drafts. And so there's all this buzz created about Jeff Ireland had a phenomenal draft that's helped set up New Orleans for years to come. You look at the Rams and you're going, all right, what is the buzz about? Why Brad Holmes? And yesterday we went in the deep dive, and now he is the Detroit Lions GM, and here's more reporting on this. Ian Rapoport says the Lions have agreed to terms on a 5-year deal with the Rams Director of College Scouting, Brad Holmes, as their new GM. So what has this guy done with the Rams? And this is where you really get into, well, damn, that's impressive. And I apologize for those of you that this is repeat, but the Rams the last 4 years have traded their first-round picks. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. They had no first-round picks. So moves to, the big splash move to go get Jalen Ramsey, for instance, cost them a couple first-round picks. So this has been their formula, but they've remained competitive, and they've dotted their roster with drafted players or even undrafted free agents who start for them with no first-round picks. And impressively, even though they gave up their first-round picks, they are also an organization that is operating. Now, Les Snead's the GM, but I imagine that Brad Holmes has a lot to do with this. But Les Snead has made enough moves where they had 8 picks in 2017, 11 picks in 2018, 8 picks in 2019, and 9 picks in 2020. And the best organizations, what they get in the draft, one of the things that's commonly woven throughout them is they hoard draft picks. Okay, so what have they done with those picks? They have managed to come up with 13 starters in the last 4 drafts with no first-round picks. Second-round pick, Cam Akers. Safety, Taylor Rapp, who's hurt, starter. Rob Havenstein, second-rounder, starter. Third round, Darrell Henderson, their second leading rusher. He's been a spot starter for them. Third-round pick. John Johnson, starting safety. He's got 8 picks in 4 years. Third-round pick. Cooper Kupp, leading wide receiver. Third-round pick for them. They got a productive tight end in the 4th round, and Tyler Higbee. Also in the 4th round, Josh Reynolds, their third leading wide receiver. Samson Ekubon, who is a outside linebacker, a rush play, 4.5 sacks, 4th rounder. Their leading tackler this year before he got hurt was a 5th rounder, Micah Kaiser. They have a starting guard, David Edwards, 5th rounder, 6th rounder, defensive tackle Sebastian Joseph Day. Jordan Fuller was a safety at Ohio State. We watched him play in the Big Ten for a bunch of years. He was a really good player. Wasn't considered a huge pro prospect. He was a 6th-round pick in this draft. He's a rookie with 3 interceptions playing in their secondary. Undrafted free agent Troy Reeder is a starting linebacker. 13 starters in 4 drafts without any first-round picks. Brad Holmes runs their draft. Now, Gator, he's got no experience being the guy.
No, none.
This is his first chance to be the guy, A. B, it's not just drafting. You got to be able to sign the right free agents. You got to be able to negotiate contracts. You got to be able to negotiate trades. That isn't his forte. But I think the most important thing is he is a draft guy, and if you look at the results the last 4 years, it's unquestionable. He's done a great job given the resources he's had. I like it.
Yeah, I the more I investigate into this and see what he's done, I like it as well. And you've mentioned being able to draft in the last several drafts without having the first-round picks. Well, when they had first-round picks, what did they do?
They got Aaron Donald.
They got Aaron Donald. Well, they had 2 first-round picks that year. Aaron Donald was their second first-round pick. They took an offensive tackle in Greg Robinson, who's had mixed reviews, but he's been around.
Yeah.
Todd Gurley the next year. Todd Gurley was great. They moved on from him when they had to. Jared Goff was the first player taken in the 2016 draft. I'm not a huge Jared Goff fan, but he's had playoff success too. So there's that. Those are the last guys they took in the first round before getting into the second-round frenzy in 2018. They didn't even have a second-round pick. They had to go to the third round. But, as I mentioned yesterday, it's fascinating when you see how many players have actually are still in the league that they drafted. They've drafted all these players, and they're all still in the league. Over the last 3 seasons, every one of those players is. Over the last 4 seasons, all but 2. You go to 2016. Since 2016, only 3 players that they drafted are not in the NFL right now. That's amazing when you talk about the volume of picks that they had, specifically in that period, that came well after the first round. That's amazing. Because you talk about how many picks they had, and you know that you're getting a bunch of 6th-round picks and 5th-round picks and 7th-round picks. These guys are all in the league.
Now, one of the first things I'm going to look for when this guy, his first big move is how he handles Stafford, because they've got till mid-March really to make any decision if they're going to move on from him, because after he gets a roster bonus for $10 million, he'd go from being a $19 million cap hit to being a $29 million cap hit. So if you're going to move him, you got to move him by mid-March. So is he going to do something with Stafford? What is he going to say about Stafford when he gets introduced here? The second thing is the draft. The Lions only have 5 picks in this draft. And I want them to either trade current players, and they don't have a lot of capital for that, for draft picks. But the way you do it is you trade back. At 7, there isn't a home run as it stands right now. Things could change. My opinion could change. But as it stands right now, there's not a home run at 7. Brad Holmes, if one of the first things he does is start moving back and getting more picks, I feel like we're going to have a guy that knows how this game is played. I feel like a guy who knows what's worked in Los Angeles. I feel like we have the guy that's been able to make it work without top picks and still be able to find starters and good ones on a team that Gator is in the playoffs and won a playoff game. They won a playoff game.
Yeah.
And they're banged up too, right? I mean, they're not exactly healthy.
No, they are not. Number one thing he's going to have to do is hire a coach. That's the first thing he's going to do. And then you mentioned the Stafford stuff. Absolutely, it's something to contemplate. Getting back to, acquiring draft picks, which is what this team has to do. You have to get draft capital, and of course that's one of the main reasons I want to trade Stafford, is because you have to get more draft capital to rebuild this team, because he's been part of that process with the Rams, and because he's been the draft guy. Now, he wasn't the GM who pulls the trigger on the trades, but He is the draft guy, and he sees all that. I would imagine that teams around the league, when you get to draft night, and draft day, that those teams recognize that, hey, the new guy in Detroit comes from the Rams. And what do the Rams do? They trade it all the time. So you've got that familiarity with having a common trade partner, or you know that this guy is willing to wheel and deal, or that comes for the organization anyway, that was willing to wheel and deal. And I think that's a plus, too.
Yeah, but also, Doug, you just read off his resume. He can do it, right, without a first-round pick. Or, like, he doesn't need those picks to do it. He can do it later in the draft. So what if his thought is, I keep Matthew Stafford, and because I'm so good at the draft that, I can get starters anywhere, right? Third, fourth,
you got to rain on my
round.
parade all the time.
I'm just trying to all angles. We talk about it all the time, right? And another thing, speaking of more rain on the parade. By the way, I like Brad Holmes. I like the hiring. I like that he's younger. I think this could be a really good hire. But like I said, more rain on the parade. The personnel stuff, the college scouting stuff, we all want that. Appreciate someone who can identify talent.
Yep.
Isn't that kind of what Bob Quinn did in New England?
No. Bob Quinn was a pro scouting. Okay. He was all in pro scouting.
No, I thought he was also a scout in the scouting department.
He was. Well, he had more years as a pro scout. He had, I don't know what the national scout, regional scout for a couple of years, but in 29 to 2011, assistant director of pro personnel. 2012 to 12-15, director of pro scouting. He seemed like he was more into pro scouting than he was college scouting. And as more time goes on, the more I've kind of you need a guy who's going to master the draft.
Okay, and the clouds are moving away, Doug. They're moving away right now. Right? Just maybe a little more sprinkle, a little darkness. If you can help me.
Look, no, but Kate, your point.
Go ahead.
Your point is absolutely salient about Stafford, because it's all. I mean, the Rams, they took their shot on the first pick overall, just like the Lions did, and they took a quarterback. And the difference is they had success with Jared Goff, and the Lions have not had success with Matthew Stafford. So, and it's also a difference of age. I mean, you're talking the embryonic stages of a career versus a guy who's a 12-year veteran. So I recognize the possibility is absolutely there that the Lions would hang on to Stafford, and I probably put it, my 51 says they're going to keep Stafford. It's not what I would do, but at least I think that now that we've got a GM in place, there could be flexibility.